Hey all, here OS Reviews. You're watching our quick hands-on comparison between two smartwatches. Over on the left, we have the Cospit Hope. This is from a new manufacturer here in 2019. And on the right, we have the very popular Xiaomi Huami Amazfit Stratos, or also known as the Pace 2. So both of these are smartwatches priced under $200, and they have very similar hardware designs, but as far as the functionality and the target that they're aimed at, they are quite different. So right now you can find the Cospit Hope for about $140 compared to the Amazfit Stratos, currently around $175, so the Xiaomi is a little bit more expensive. Now right off the bat, I will say that the Amazfit is a sports-oriented smartwatch. So its primary focus is on tracking sports very accurately and giving you longer battery performance and endurance, compared to the Cospit Hope, which although looks very sporty, is more of a everyday smartwatch. It's a kind of a jack of all trades, so to speak. It doesn't run on Wear OS or a light version of Android. It's running on a full version of Android 7.1 Nougat, and it has a skin, but you can install any application from the Play Store that you would want to. So with that in mind, let's take a closer look at the hardware design. So both of these have a curved glass on the front, which is made by Corning, and it's 2.5D, making interaction with swipes feel a bit more natural on the touchscreens. We have a 1.35-inch display on the Amazfit versus 1.4 inches, so a little bit larger on the Cospit. This is also a full round display compared to one which has a flat tire, so it's not completely round on the bottom, as you can see there. The technology is also quite different. Xiaomi is using a transflective panel. It's known as e-paper, not to be confused with e-ink. It's a different technology, but it does mean it's very easy to see even in outdoor environments, especially when there's some sun which is hitting on the display. It still is fully readable, so it's great for outdoor sports and activities, compared to the Cospit, which is a more traditional AMOLED display, which is very punchy and vibrant. It looks better indoors in terms of color saturation. However, it struggles to be read more clearly outdoors and also consumes more power as well. The resolution here is 400 by 400 pixels compared to 320 by 300 pixels on the Amazfit. So it has a sharper display on the Cospit if you look very closely, but both are fairly decent as far as the resolution is concerned. Underneath the hood, we have built-in GPS on both watches. There are continuous heart rate monitors on both watches as well, and obviously Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. However, the Cospit has built-in 4G LTE because it supports a SIM card if you're using it as a regular cell phone. So that is one additional cellular connectivity that the Amazfit does not have. Taking a look at the design next, we have kind of a carbon fiber texture made out of plastic infused on the Amazfit compared to just regular polycarbonate on the Cospit. And also in terms of the crown keys, the placement are all very similar. However, there is no center button on the Cospit. Instead, it's an 8-megapixel camera, kind of an unusual choice, but you can see the top and bottom keys are very similar, and they also feel very similar when you're pressing on them, which is to say pretty tactile and responsive on both watches. In terms of thickness, you can see the Cospit is also thicker. They both have removable watch straps, which you can customize and swap out if you don't really like the ones included in the box, and both of the ones included are made out of a TPU rubber material. Cospit took a lot of inspiration from Xiaomi in terms of designing the Hope, because the outer shell in terms of the ceramic bezel and the kind of tick marks for the time, if you're looking at an analog style watch face, is very similar looking. When it comes to the specifications underneath, now there are even more differences between the two. Cospit Hope is making a bit more of a splash these days because it's the first smartwatch that has 3 gigs of RAM and 32 gigs of built-in storage, compared to the Amazfit, which has 512 megabytes of RAM and 4 gigs of built-in storage. We've also got a dual-core 1.2 GHz processor on the Xiaomi compared to a quad-core 1.3 GHz processor on the Cospit. So again, pretty much in terms of specs all around, this thing does have more powerful internals, but let's find out whether real-world performance actually matches those very impressive specs on paper, because we are talking about a full version of Android compared to something that's been more customized from Xiaomi to really run better on low-end hardware. So on both of these watches, you can change the watch face by long pressing on this main screen here, and we can tell that it's a little bit faster on the Cospit, but both are easy to use enough, and you can swipe through many different preset options. Both of these watches also have a lot of different customization options from the app that you can find for iOS or for Android. Xiaomi is Amazfit is kind of a cult device these days. It's gotten surprisingly popular over the past few months, but Cospit has also released a very impressive array of watch faces. In fact, right now their official app has over 500 to pick from, so you get a good selection on both if you want to change it up with a more digital or animated style face. It really is completely up to you. There's a lot of different styles to pick and select from. Otherwise, the styles of the interface do have some similarities. Now, one reason why there's a flat tire on the Amazfit is, you can kind of see on camera, is there's an ambient light sensor, which means that the display adjusts itself automatically when there is more or less light in your surroundings. That is a feature that the Cospit does not have. So if you want to adjust the brightness of the panel, you have to do that manually using the controls on the very top of the screen. In terms of navigation, both are also kind of different. Both rely on gestures. On Xiaomi, we can swipe up to access notifications. On the Cospit, we swipe over from the left. Instead, if we swipe from the bottom on the Cospit, we have access to just number of steps, basically our pedometer function displayed as different visualizations, and that's what swiping from the bottom brings up. Swiping down on the Xiaomi here brings up some quick shortcuts, including our weather, as well as the brightness of the screen if we want to change it manually, as well as airplane mode, things like that. This is pretty similar to on the Cospit, although it's separated into different panels if you want to see weather information compared to on this, which is on one page. So it's a bit more simplified and gives you that information at a glance. On the Cospit, it requires a bit more sliding around if you want to access features like clearing up the RAM, for example. On the Cospit, we can swipe over from the right to have access to our full list of applications, and this is actually very similar to Android Wear. So the launcher that they've installed on top of the Android 7.1 is very reminiscent of just a regular Android Wear smartwatch. But on the Xiaomi, it's very different. The reason why we have to swipe up to access notifications is because swiping left or right is essentially all giving us different functions. Each page is essentially a different widget. There really isn't a full list of apps because they're all already scattered onto separate pages. Majority are meant for sports or fitness and health, such as sleep tracking, timers, and compasses, which you can access immediately without having to go further into an app to see more details. Now, the Cospit does have a built-in microphone, so you can, again, make phone calls with it, as well as access voice commands for things like, Google Assistant. So that is going to be one difference with the Xiaomi, which does not have a built-in mic, and therefore you can't make phone calls or access any kind of quick voice prompts from the watch. The 9 sports that it tracks from out of the box, including running, jogging, biking, basketball, ping pong, and jump roping. So these are the sports that are built in by default, but of course, since it has the Play Store, you are able to just download any additional content you would want to, so additional fitness apps that you can use to supplement new activities. In terms of the accuracy of both of these watches when it comes to fitness, I would say that the Amazfit also has a slight edge. It locks in a signal for the GPS a little bit faster than the Cospit, but as long as you're outdoors, both of them will find the signal, I would say, in under 3 minutes or so on average. In terms of the heart rate, they're both fairly accurate, but the Amazfit is again slightly more accurate. On the Cospit, it seems to over-calibrate or over-count your heartbeats per minute until 10 seconds later when it starts to fluctuate down a little bit, eventually getting to a more correct result. Interface of both of these watches in terms of the sports tracking, you can see here are both fairly elegant and straightforward, just showing us very simple information like the duration of our run, as well as our heart rate, as well as calories burned, simple information like that, as well as the time on the very top. So not too many differences there. Lastly, in terms of battery life, that's where the Amazfit also triumphs. It will easily get you through between 5 to 10 days of use, depending on how heavily you're accessing GPS, as well as syncing it with your phone. So it has pretty long battery life, again, thanks to the transflective display. It's a little shorter than on the Xiaomi Amazfit Bip, which is even more simplified with less sensors, but definitely is one of the longest battery lives you'll find on a wearable. Compared to the Cospit, where because it has all these sensors built on in, and again, all this RAM, it really is like a smartphone, you have to charge it every 2 days. So that's been our hands-on comparison between the Cosmit Hope and the Xiaomi Amazfit Stratos. The Stratos is almost a year old now, so time flies pretty quick, versus the Cospit, which has been just released. Ultimately though, even though these watches have very similar design, as you can see here with the ceramic bezel and the sporty look, they are pretty different watches underneath the hood. The Cospit, which is more of a jack-of-all-trades with a larger and higher quality display, compared to the Amazfit, which is more geared exclusively towards sports. and it does a great job at tracking sports right out of the box without requiring to tinker around and install anything else. So if you care about sports and long battery life first, I would say that the Amazfit is still going to be the better smartwatch to pick up. However, if you're someone who isn't as focused exclusively on sports and you do other things, such as maybe calling people, accessing Google Assistant, then I would say that the Cospit is definitely an interesting option to consider because it is one of the most feature-rich watches, at least on paper, that you can find here at the start of 2019. So you can find out more details about both and our reviews on both of these watches, but for now that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. That's been a closer look at the differences and similarities between the Cospit Hope and the Amazfit Stratos.